Hey, hi. Welcome to Leaving Crazy Town with Finn and Sarah. God, what kind of voice was that? Was I squeaking? Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Now you're being professional. Hi, everybody.
What's the topic today, Finn?
We're going to talk about grief
Grief.
with a big smile.
Yes.
You know why I say that? Because it's an interesting topic. I'm smiling because it's an interesting topic. And a lot of people will think of grief. What do they think automatically? Death.
Yes.
A loss.
Loss of a
death.
loved one.
But grief is any kind of loss.
Yes.
And it could be loss of a job, loss of a person or a pet, a divorce, any kind of change, wanted and unwanted.
Yes.
These aren't just unexpected things. You know, you could expect a change. You could have motivated the change yourself and still experience grief.
Some examples. Your kid's going off to college. I know a friend of hers just experienced that with her kids moving away.
That's a change, right?
That's a change.
Yeah.
And it's a positive change, but you're going to have feelings because it's new.
Yeah. Loss of hope, loss of unexpected, like unrealized dreams.
Just thought of another one. Physical issues. So my sweetheart has some physical issues that are a big deal. And at times he hasn't been able to ski, which was a huge thing he loved to do. He can't do that right now. And he has some feelings about that going into the winter. It can be really complicated because you don't typically think about these things with grief, but you can lose, especially as you age.
Oh yeah, aging.
You know what I mean? Aging. Losing, certain capabilities physically, your looks,
your skin,
all kinds of things. That is grief. Now, so identifying which aspects could possibly be happening in your life, and then we're going to talk about that because it's so hard to acknowledge and feel what happens. People do other things that are disguising their grief that they don't recognize.
They act out.
So I'm going to give you a crazy example. Mother's funeral.
Hold your hats, people.
Slept with my neighbor from childhood. Okay.
Her mother didn't at her mother's
No.
funeral. She did. Let's just be clear. I feel like that you kind of skipped over that I part.
Okay. Wasn't aware really that I was having feelings because my mother and I had a very complicated relationship. And then the next day I find myself, acting out. And
when she said sleep, she wasn't sleeping.
Okay, whatever. It even got crazier. He ended up coming to California to visit me, and it turns out he was bipolar. And it was a long, complicated story. But the bottom
As
line
they usually are with you.
Bottom line is, I was not aware that I was grieving, even though I was at a funeral. So just think about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and when Sarah said she slept with someone, it is true that sleep is also something that people do when they have a lot of grief.
Oh my gosh, great.
Yeah. So
acting out sexually, calling up an old boyfriend.
drinking, drugging, any kind of any distraction.
Yes,
Any
very
distraction.
good. Any distraction.
Spending money,
right.
We are my stepkids and I laughed because when Margaret died, it was always this is a grief purchase. We had like a house grief purchase, a vehicle grief purchase. I remodeled the house. I mean, there were some big ticket items going on there, but we just laugh and call it a grief purchase. We addressed it. We were acknowledging what it was.
That is such a great one. The other thing kind of along those lines is suddenly you're involved in 18 projects. Suddenly you're traveling every weekend. No. Or suddenly you're buying trips. You're needing to remodel your house. Just realize. Go ahead.
And also too, so loss of a spouse, a breakup, a divorce, wanted and unwanted,
Yes.
the death of a spouse or a partner can also bring
Retirement. Another one. Sorry.
Okay, but that's not where I'm going with this.
I'm sorry.
We'll get into retirement after.
I'm sorry.
But what people do and will do is instead of experiencing the grief, like Sarah and I said, to avoid it, they start getting into relationships. They start dating everybody and everything and the opposites and keeping themselves busy,
Yes.
dating instead of sitting with the grief.
Perfect. Okay.
Retirement. It is. It's a whole loss of identity.
Retirement is huge, you guys, I retired, even though I can't even say the word. I say I transitioned.
Oh, so did I.
But I let go of a job I had for 30 years. Oh my God. God, I just realized that's a whole other grief trauma. Yes, but retirement is huge for people for a variety of ways. Losing a certain job position you've been in.
I just want to rehash something.
Okay, go ahead.
So a few years ago, Sarah was retiring. She was like really reducing her workload. Her son was going to school, and she sold her house. And she was running around going, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel so insane? And I'm like, maybe there's a lot of loss and change going on. And she was experiencing grief, remember?
I totally
You were like buzzing
remember.
around. Like,
I was insane. So it's really a feeling that kind of, because it's painful and sad and not easy to feel, kind of we automatically go into these other behaviors.
you see your son's bunk bed that he had from childhood being carried out of the house.
That was so sad. Oh my God. I gave away a lot of furniture, and the bunk bed definitely got me.
Yeah.
All right. A few other signs that you might be grieving or avoiding grief. Suddenly you're blaming everybody else, or you're angry, you're irritable, restless, and discontent. You're irritable with everybody. You're angry at everybody.
And hungry.
Angry. Yeah. Eating, another thing.
Yeah.
But the whole being angry is kind of a part of avoiding grief. So it's just an easier, more accessible feeling state for some people.
It's also more motivating, right? So
yes.
if you have things you have to get done, I think it's easier for people to stay in an angry state. They can get things done. Sometimes grief can be overwhelming and depressive. And
yes. Yeah, and like you're saying, the whole sleeping thing, like if you're getting low. And the thing is, well, we're not going to get into depression, but someone could feel like they're depressed when it really is unprocessed grief. So that's a whole other episode. All right. So really looking at this, and again, we're coming into the holidays, but that's another just critical time where grief can be getting activated and you don't know it.
unless, of course, we post this after the holidays.
Yes, very true. All right, Finn, ways to deal with grief, ways to identify grief. How do we begin?
All right, well, I feel like we did talk about identifying grief because those are like the ways we act out, we can see. Hopefully we'll identify it before that. One of the things, how to cope with grief that I've discovered is to cry. So, and also get an understanding of grief, right? So I thought that grief meant that it gets better over time. Like I'm going to have an experience, a tremendous amount of grief up front.
Right.
And sadness and loss. And then over time, it's going to feel better. But what I've discovered is these stages of grief when you lose someone are really the stages of experiencing your own death. They're not necessarily the stages of grief for you, how you experience other people's. That is like a cyclical thing. So I could be fine one day when I was experiencing grief from losing Margaret, and then the next day, like really having grief. And I'm like, wait, I thought I was fine. What's wrong with me? So allowing whatever comes up for you and allowing whatever stage you're in to be what it is, and don't tell yourself. So I say experience it, resist, and it will persist. And
yes.
If I don't feel it, if I tell myself, well, it's been 3 years, why am I feeling sad now? I've already been through 3 Christmases or 3 birthdays, or now I'm pushing it away, and it's going to come out in the ways that Sarah was talking about earlier.
Yes, so many things brilliant were just said. Okay, this is the thing. Grief is different for everybody. One person may shut down. Somebody else might be angry all the time. Someone else may get over it in 3 weeks. Someone else may be for years. This is the thing. It's very personal. You know, I was talking to someone recently about their mother dying, and her experience was completely different than mine. And this is the thing. Everybody has a different relationship with their mother. For me, I had some relief with my mother dying, and I had a bunch of other feelings, but her relationship with her mother was totally different. So my process is going to be different than someone else's. So don't compare yourself to other people's process with grief.
Or what you've been told is the proper way to grieve. So not necessarily other people, but you just also brought out another point. grief comes with, when we think of grief, we think of extreme loss.
Yes.
And sadness over that loss. Don't be surprised if the sadness is mixed with relief or certain things, because it's all of it.
Yes. Don't judge yourself for the feelings you're having. I know people end up feeling guilty about feeling relief.
Yeah.
I've known someone who took care of someone for years, and when they finally died, they were guilty that they felt relief. It's like, it's okay.
I remember one morning I went downstairs to get a cup of coffee after Margaret had died, and I thought, how nice.
Right.
I just got my own coffee.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's awful. Like, it did feel, but it was nice for once to kind of be in my own space and my own energy. It wasn't because I wasn't sad that she was gone. It was just, and I could judge myself. Luckily, I did have somebody to bounce those things off of. But the other thing I would say is when we talked about choices that we experience a loss by our choice.
Yes.
So I want to get divorced. I want to change. I want to sell my house. Those losses.
Yes.
A lot of people will say, well, I'm surprised I'm feeling so sad. It's what I wanted.
Right.
Okay.
Both and.
It could be what you want, and you're still going to experience a change. It's loss.
Yes.
It is still loss.
Yes.
And if you think it's all happy, joy, free, and I'm going to run off to this new thing and avoid that, like I shouldn't feel that way, it is going to come out later.
Absolutely. I mean, I think about when I sold my house a couple of years ago. I was so happy to kind of sell it and not have that responsibility and all of that. And I loved my new little place. And oh my gosh, I raised my kid there. I have tons of memories there. That's where I was married. So it's always all of it. Like there's going to be so many feelings. It's not either or. Okay. So a few other quick things before we end. Stop. If you find yourself, like we were saying in the beginning, where you're acting out or you're busy all the time, try to stop, pause, and do some reflection. And ask yourself the question, geez, am I feeling some grief around whatever's happening right now? So check in with yourself so you can identify. Number 2, talk with someone. Very often, I don't even know what's happening with me until I call Finn or I call someone and I'm saying, I'm really feeling funky, but I'm not sure what it is. And then once you start talking about it,
well, you just sold your house.
That's right.
Remember when you were having that with Bo? Something he
Yes.
had left, he was going somewhere, and you're like, I don't understand what my issue is. And I'm like,
I know. Sometimes other people can see it so clearly, but if we're in that kind of detached feeling states, okay.
And if you're like me and you call someone and you're saying, I'm feeling off, I don't know what it is, and they tell you what it is, maybe it's this. And if you're like me, you're going to be like, that's not what it is. That's not what it is. Because I'm so resistant. And then I'll get off the phone and I'll sit for a minute. I'm like, oh, dee. Okay, that's what it was. I got to call him back and say, you were right. Oh my God, I had no idea. How do we not know? Because we don't want to feel pain.
Yes. And like Finn says, what we resist persists. So try to just give yourself small doses. Do you know what I mean? If it's a huge loss and you're overwhelmed by feelings, then really it's about dosing it. Feeling for a while. It is like feeling for a while and then distraction.
Yeah, give yourself a timer. Like, okay, I'm just going to sit with these feelings for 10 minutes.
Yes.
And do not, we always say this, do not tell yourself a story about the feelings. Just feel them.
Yes. Yes. Lastly, the thing we're going to say is compassion for yourself. Okay? This is the thing. Give yourself space and time. I know this friend of ours had 2 major losses in the last 6 months, okay? And I'm on the phone with her, and she says, Sarah, but I made this plan to go out to Colorado for a week and do this seminar, and then I was going to be done. And I'm like, you had 2 huge personal losses of relationships that you've had for years, and you're going to go to a seminar for a week on grief and resolve it? May not happen.
But
okay?
see, this is the thing. It's the brain, right? We're going to resolve it. We're going to figure it out. We're going to tie it in a bow.
Right.
When all you need to do is feel it.
Yes.
If you have to collapse on the floor, like I say, cry your little eyes out, you will eventually get up.
Yes.
And then you resume the day, and then you might have to collapse again later. but
Yes.
you're not going to think your way out of
You're
feelings.
not going to think your way out of it. Yes, brilliant. And you may just have feelings intermittently. I mean, recently I saw a Jeep, which was the car my husband who passed away drove all the time, and it just had some feelings and let them pass. And I'm not making up a story like, oh my God, I'm silly. No, that's just life. Human beings have grief, and processing your grief is going to be one of the hugest, biggest, most important tools you'll ever have for having a peaceful, joyous life. So start practicing.
Break out the tissues.
We love you. We're leaving.
I have
Fasten
a
your
great
seatbelt.
idea for our next episode.
Okay.
All the ways Finn is brilliant. Because you said it like 3 times on this one.
Oh boy.
All right, now you
Okay.
can fasten your seatbelt.
We're leaving.
Or
Love you.
grab your tissues.